this is Clichy sous Bois. This is Hôtel de Ville, and this is, well, the town hall. It's a really nice town hall, I have to say. And this is a monument to all the people who lost their lives coming from, well, you know, gave their lives during the Second World War, and those who were deported, you know, for racial discrimination, mostly probably people of Jewish origins or other people. But this is really nice. Anyway, this is the mairie. Now, talking about that, there is a long history about this place, and what we're going to check out is have things changed over the years. That's the important thing. This building here is also part of Clichy sous Bois. When you look at it from this angle, it looks really nice. So I think this basically goes to show you something. Not everything is a disaster in Clichy sous Bois. This is also Clichy sous Bois, and these are some of the buildings that came, that were, well, I was going to say, that were built during the 60s, and they're still here, housing a lot of people. But that's not what a lot of people want to talk about, and that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the high rise and what has changed over the years here. It's been a gradual improvement, but it's a bit more quieter and, I would say, safer to a certain degree, of course. All right, so today on the streets of Clichy sous Bois, what you're seeing here are the transformations that have been taking place here, and it's a positive one to say the least, because these lines here you're seeing, there is now a tram station, and these are consequence of what happened here. Well, the transformation that was forced by the locals here. So the story goes that in the early 60s, a lot of people came here. Now, when they built all the high-rise buildings and everything, and of course, one of the reasons why they were built was that, you know, you needed a lot of buildings, you needed a lot of reconstruction, a lot of the destruction after the war, a lot of displaced people. So most of what you see today was a consequence of traumatized people who made decisions in the 50s after the war and the 60s that high-rise buildings were the thing to build, because that is the only way to house people. And it sounded like a good idea at the time, but what happened later was that it was not a good idea. Put it that way. It sounded like a good idea. And one of the things you see about high-rise buildings is that most people, it was efficient. Well, because when you look at this, all these buildings here, it was just great. And everyone was like, oh, this is great. And apparently in the 60s, when people came here, it was meant for the middle class. And a lot of people were like, oh, this is great. You have flowers and all these great things. What's there not to like? And of course, and then the middle class enjoyed it. And most of the people who came here were people from the former French colonies, like Algeria, North Africa, and then Sub-Saharan Africa. And this is what a lot of people actually show you. No lights here. It's very dark. It's very dark. I think there is a lift. This is one of the other issues people complain about, that the lift, oh, this one works. There's a lift here, so that's a good thing. But anyway, so that's a big gaping hole there. And it's basically not, it's not good here, put it that way. So it was a good idea at the time, but now over the years, it has deteriorated so much. But of course, there's something else when you come to a place like this, I think it's important to put a lot of things into perspective and not just tell the story you want to tell. All right, so people will come here, look at this, it's dirty, it's filthy. Yeah, to a certain degree it is, but anyway, back to the story of how we got here. So when after the war, all the people fleeing the Algerian war, after the cry for independence and rebuilding after the war, they all came here. And that was fine, and it just looked normal at the time. It was a great idea, it was new, it was clean, middle class, working class were mixed together. And as time goes by, things started to change. A lot of more migrants, that's not good. A lot more, so no one's taking care of these buildings. And I'll give you, just for you to know, that the buildings are in a state of abandonment now for the simple reason that the government has decided there is no point in taking care of these buildings because they are slated to be demolished. So if you come here and it looks abandoned, yes. So that is important to bear in mind. So for example, the one here is not going to be, so more buildings. So anytime you come here and you see garbage and all these other things, you need to understand the context that it's in a state where the government is like, there's no point in spending more money here. We're just going to let it be, and we're going to start relocating people. And something else, if you come here, sometimes people would come and show you, they go around the parking space and say, look, this place, look at all the burnt out cars. This is so bad. Well, it is bad, but what happened was that once they started to move people out of the buildings and then shut down the entrance, because it takes time. So you start to move a few families out, and some would accept the relocation, others would fight it, and it just takes forever and ever. So some of the families, once they left the cars that were in bad state, they just abandoned the cars as well. So that's another reason why if you come here, you see a lot of abandoned cars or burnt cars where young people would come and just say, oh, they've already abandoned it, I might as well just set it on fire. And then they play with it. So this is part of what you see here. But it doesn't mean everything is like really bad. It just means that they're in transition. So now let's talk about the problem that actually happened here in 2005. So the area it's only about, say, an hour from Paris, but an hour, but that's if you come by bus. And this is where it gets interesting, that in the 60s and 70s, they moved people here, and it was nice, it was new, but they didn't give too much thought to work. How are you going to, you see, these are the type of cars you see here that people say, okay, look at that, it's abandoned, and that's why you shouldn't move here. But it's abandoned because some of these buildings are going to be demolished, and that's it. So it's not news, put it that way. But the strange, I wouldn't say strange, the really sad thing is that when you look at some of these buildings, when they were new, it must have been great. But now, they're in such a terrible situation, and there are so many, I'm surprised by the amount of buildings in the area. So But anyway, back to the story. So when they built this, they didn't give thought to the idea that if you build these cities with thousands of families here, they need to work. And most of the jobs are not in this part of the country, of the city. They need to travel to the center of Paris, and there wasn't any great transportation at the time. So it made it very inconvenient for people. So if you have to travel and pay a lot in transportation, by the time you go and come back, you're broke because you pay everything in transportation. And this reminds me of the same problem that happens in Dharavi in India, one of the largest slums in the world. And they said what happened was that they tried to relocate some of these people, move them away from the slum and give them fancy housing. And most of them came back into the slum. And the problem was that when they decided to give them housing, some of the housing was outside of the location where they work. So they had to travel much further, and the amount they were earning wasn't enough for them to make it worth their while. So they decided, look, the house is nice. I have to pay more. I have to pay more for the house, rent, and everything else. But I can't afford it. So they moved back to where they were before. So the same thing happened in this area. When it was built, it felt like a great place to be, but people started to realize that you're just far from everything. It wasn't a great idea, finally. And so they got into a situation where a lot of the balconies is being used for storage, not what, let me go and check out one of these. So this is also in most of these buildings there are they're called underground places where people you have extra storage, but now they've been locked up. So people just sometimes leave abandoned things here, and this has been locked up, and this as well. So no security, put it that way, but it's rather clean when compared to. I mean, it needs a bit of TLC, but it's not as bad as the other entrance. So it just depends. Now, the story goes that if you decide, I'm not even sure where we are now. All right, so I think I need to go back to the other side. But you see, there is a lot of litter, and people, I don't know if the council comes and clean things up or not, but it's just, yeah, it feels it needs a bit of a cleaning and regular TLC, you know. All right, back to the story. So, just like people coming here, they have to travel really far. And the whole thing just meant that those who could afford it moved out to get closer to Paris, and then they kept moving more immigrants and people with other issues into the same location, and it became the ghetto that we know it is today. So, then, because of the crime and all the civil unrest, the government decided, this is France at the end of the day. We cannot just allow people to do whatever they want. And of course, That sounded great. So, more buildings. I'm amazed by the sheer number of buildings, and they've actually cleaned this up. By the way, if you're wondering what, let me just show you here. There used to be a building here, and it's been cleaned up. So now it's in the phase, so it's been barricaded, and so most of these buildings sooner or later would have to be cleaned. Well, would have to go as well. But anyway. And then you have the smaller ones, and these ones apparently, I'm not sure if these are the newer ones that were being built, but anyway, we'll look into those in a while. But the story of people actually moving out and then moving all the more social cases into the same area, so you've got thousands and thousands of them, and it is reported that unemployment in this Clichy sous Bois has been at an all-time high because of the isolation and people not being able to get to Paris on time for work. And another thing is the reputation. I don't know if most people actually appreciate this about work in France. First of all, you have the prejudice of being a brown person, or you're an immigrant, or you know, you don't speak French very well, you've got an accent, all those stuff. It means it's hard to integrate in society. And this, by the way, happened to a lot of the Portuguese and Italian and Spanish immigrants in the early 19th century. So, okay, so these are the newer ones I've heard about. So here, you see, what they've done is they've made it smaller buildings, smaller apartments, and they just look nicer. And now you have a bit more security. So to access this little one, you need to actually live there. So that's you need to actually live there. There is security. You need to enter the code to access it. And when you compare these to the older ones, of course, it's much better. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. So, by the way, the Italians, when they came here, they wouldn't give them jobs because they were not French, you know, and they were calling them spaghetti and, you know, giving them all these names, and some of them had to change their names to French-sounding names so that they would better integrate. So the first generation suffered a lot. The second generation did better, and subsequent generation had better integration. And as time goes by, of course, you know, after the war, more immigrants from former French colonies also came to France, but they faced the same level of discrimination. But this time, after multiple generations, you still have the same face, you know, you still got flavor. And so integration and being accepted was just so hard. And also religion plays an important part of that, you know, cultural identity, all that stuff. It just meant that it was harder. So here in the area, they had more people, and so you ended up in a situation where they were isolated, and then it was just unemployment for the younger people. Most of them born, most of the new generation born here, they just felt that they were not. You're French, but you're not. So it just became a really terrible situation. And guess what? Then they said, okay, policing, we need to do better at policing. But people are saying you need to deal with the underlying issue. You can't just say we're going to just clean up the area without understanding what actually caused the problems. And obviously, the other thing was that no government was really interested, not unless there is an election year coming up and everyone's like, ooh, let's give you something simple to do. And so it was basically neglected. And so the neglect led to what you're seeing now. And finally, policemen came and they started to go heavy-handed. And the young people saying we're being profiled by the police and we're being harassed. They never do anything for us, until. But when there is crime, they're heavy-handed and they don't do the same thing in other more affluent areas. Anyway, all that stuff. And then came 2005. Two young French North African children were running away from the police, and they didn't know what to do. So they ran into one of the electrical station, and they got electrocuted and died, of course. And when the news got out that it was the police chasing them, of course, the media talking about it, it became a frenzy, and then it caused the infamous 2005 riots. And that riot was amplified by the media because it generated views. It was like clickbaity. It was just really, okay, you see that? That is the tram. We're going to talk about the tram later. But anyway, it was just chaos. And because it's Paris, other smaller communities felt the rage that exactly this is what we've been talking about. The police were against us. We need to do something. Come together. I mean, come together basically was chaos, right? Burning cars. It was absolutely not good. So the consequence of that is the tram. This is new. So the government didn't bother to link this area to Paris so that people could go and get jobs, so that it would be easier for them until after the riots. So the riot sparked a lot of heavy headlines. It was in the news all over the world. It was just, and the reason, not because of this area that it burnt down, it also impacted other areas, other major cities with a lot of migrants feeling the same pain of not being properly integrated into the French society, became apparent, and everyone just basically set the country on fire. And this brings the question, does it work? Well, it obviously works, because now you have this shiny new tram line, and the plan is to put air here as well, which is the French train here as well. And why? Because they thought that's what people have been asking for years, and you did nothing about it. And now, after so much bad publicity for France, you know, the pays of the country of what's it called? Égalité, fraternité, you know, fraternity, equality, and there's one additional thing, and people are like, we don't even know what you're talking about. All right, so this is another one of the buildings on the outside, and these are the old buildings. So we're going to see, let's go and see the new one now. It goes to show you that the riot did shame the government, shame the French society to a certain degree, and then showed that a lot of the problems that people have been talking about, and they've been asking for help, that they never got anything from the council or the local government, has now been heard, because everyone's like, oh, France, you can talk. Are you going to lecture us now? Look at what you're doing to all your French people of you know, former colonies and things like that. And yeah, so now they've got things. It's happening. Things are changing, and so from that perspective, I think it's a good thing, no matter how you try to look at it. Now, some people have said, well, you know, the government created the problem, and now they're fixing it, and they want they want a cookie, or they want biscuit for all their problems. But you know, when it's good, it's good. At least you have to give them props for that, and I think that's a good thing, because you can't really just it's not all bad. That's what I'm saying. So if the government is doing a good job, and so this is what they're doing now. This is part of the big project. This is like a almost 24 million euros of investment. And what are they doing here? I don't know what it is. It looks like a fancy shopping center. So that's good. So, and the good thing is that it creates jobs. You've got a crane there. It creates jobs, and it's going to regenerate here. The other thing that people are worried about now that change is coming and it's getting better is, are we going to benefit from it? Because talk about gentrification, talk about regeneration, no matter how you want to call it, you end up always in a situation where people are like, okay, let's clean it up. They kick everyone out, bring a new set of people in. But those who have endured years of difficulties never benefit from it. And so people are saying, we hope that once, you know, all these big projects are finished, that the locals who have been here for years would also benefit from it, and it's not just going to be bringing new people, because now they price all the locals out. But I think the project is going to take a long time, because when you look at the amount of buildings left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 huge buildings left, I think it's just going to be almost, it's going to take, I don't know, another decade to really complete that project. So it's an interesting thing that's happening here. So this is part of the demolition. Look at that, used to be a building here, and it's gone, and the people relocated. So it seems not all the buildings have been destroyed. Some have been completely, they've been given a facelift. So I hope it's not just a facelift. But if you look at this one here, it looks nice and colorful. So we'll try to get a closer look. So the regeneration and everything that people are talking about, when you think about it, it's not going to be that easy because it's a lot of money. And also, once you do that, it means raising the price of rent, and it's just going to get more expensive. So that is inevitable. So this is the new building, and I don't think it looks like it's been repainted and reworked with security gates and things like that. So I would imagine that if you used to live here and now you have a building that looks a bit much better with a lot of I wouldn't say green area, but at least more security, and it just means the place. Yeah, it does look better. So that's a new building. I wouldn't say new building, but these are the newer ones. They're much better. So, yeah, the government is doing a better job since the riot. And the riot is like, 20 years ago. And if you look at some of the new buildings now, even the entrance feels good. Now you have a tram station, and it just feels modern. It feels clean. Children are able to just go outside and enjoy themselves. And I would take it that the parents are a bit more, you're less worried that your children were going to, crime and things like that. So when you see this, I think it gives people hope, because now with the tram, it takes you closer. It's easier to get to Paris, the center of Paris, and it just feels like a normal neighborhood. It doesn't feel like ghetto. But of course, you need to constantly keep an eye on things, because humans would always be humans. If you don't keep an eye on this, it might go south. It doesn't take that much. This is something Americans often don't understand, why you will dry your clothes on the balcony like this. It gives you the feel that it's not a very affluent area, and which is true, but then people, anyway, it's a different conversation. But the point is that change has come here. It's much better. It feels safer. But some of the buildings are still in derelict condition, and this is 20 years on. They're building a new area, so it does take a lot of time to regenerate an area and make it feel safer and better. And apart from time, it takes a lot of money. And also, if you relocate people, where do you move them to? And do they really want to relocate? So it's a very sad thing. By the way, someone said, in Clichy sous Bois, so the older housing, how they got to that, why they degenerate so fast, was that the council didn't have enough money, because they were not getting a lot of help from the state, decided, instead of maintaining this, why don't we just sell the apartments for cheap? Like, the right to buy in the UK, when you had all the council houses. So the HLM here, they said, we're going to just sell it. So people thought, oh, that's a great idea. Let me buy my own apartment. And then it means I don't have to pay rent anymore. I only have to pay the charges for the maintenance. And unfortunately, some of those houses cost about, say, 60,000, and even some of the shocks got into place where people decided, with a lot of money, decided, oh, if the council is selling, let's go and buy. So they were buying some of those houses for like 30, 40,000 euros, and then subletting it to other people. And so the problem that created was later, once they started to sublet, some people were not paying their charges for the maintenance, and the people maintaining it were basically ripping off the tenants. So it just went down the drain really fast after that. So the problem is really a combined issue of greed, people don't care, and just urban decay over time. So yeah, this is the story of Clichy sous Bois, and the story is that things are getting better, and I think that's an uplifting story. There's still a long way to go, but it is not as bad as it used to be. And it also answers the question, does protesting, even if violently, actually create change? It does. Well, it did in this case anyway.